Hello, and welcome to episode 59 of Gondor Calls for Ale, a Middle-earth strategy battle games podcast. I am, of course, your host, Sam Gallagher, and with me again from the wilds of Scotland, he has returned, is my brother Ben.
Hello, listeners and viewers. Welcome back to the show. I can report, Sam, that from the wilds of Scotland, that when they can't find hobbits, midges will in fact quite happily settle for Gallagher.
Ah, well, it happens. Well, I'm glad you made it mostly uneaten and back home, and back to Gondor Calls for Ale, the real reason to return home, I know, Ben.
Absolutely.
But
I enjoyed your last episode, Sam. Even without me, I enjoyed it. I listened to it in my tent. It was highly entertaining. It got me all excited for Lord of the Rings all over again. I was feeling a little bit of a lag. I listened to Sam chatting about some Angmar, and I got so excited again. It was good.
Excellent, Ben. But before you get too excited and jump through the most important part of Gondor Calls for Ale to discuss things, you have to tell me you've returned, and do you return drink in hand?
I do indeed, Sam, for I have with me a fourth age ale. The third age of the world is ended, and a new age is begun. And it is your task to order and preserve its beginning, to preserve what must be preserved. For though much has been saved, much must now pass away.
It's a very lengthy.
It's a metaphor, okay, Sam?
Oh, yeah? You have to tell me what that is a metaphor for later.
Indeed. Well, Sam, that's my lengthy draft. What have you got for this episode?
Well, Ben, I'm having something slightly more punchier than that, because I'm having a Pukelman Porter, a beer that helps you find your way even through the wilds of a new edition.
Nice. Very tasty.
Yes. Which, of course, dear listener and viewer, is what we're going to be talking about. Mm-hmm. What else would we be talking about, Ben? A little late, perhaps, to this party, but you are now hopefully sitting back and either watching or viewing, and going to get a big old earful either way of the Gallagher brothers' thoughts, feelings, and opinions. This is a Sam Gallagher kind of episode.
I do want to say, Sam, that a podcast, a Gondor Calls for Ale, is never late. It does, in fact, arrive precisely when it means to.
Sure. It's it's maybe a few wizards short of a White Council over here, but
we get there in the end.
We do. So that is what we're going to be talking about in this episode. If you're viewing, there is no slideshow this time, so this is the perfect episode to listen to. But we also are, as you may have gathered, on YouTube, and if you haven't subscribed, we're very close to 100 subscribers, which would be pretty cool to break that mark before we hit the new edition. So if you haven't, please consider subscribing, like this video, leave us a comment. I do make an effort to get back to all of them. While we're on the topic of all of that, Ben, we also are going to talk about our Patreon. We have a Patreon if you want to hear more episodes that are mostly just Ben and Sam Gallagher's opinions on all things Middle-earth. There are plenty of those over on Patreon. We try and get one additional one out, at least one additional one out every month. Definitely bumbled that there. And it really, really does help us continue to create these brilliant, dare I say, cutting-edge episodes.
I actually met one of our dear patrons just the other day, Sam. One of you requested that we do the Army of the Dead as a sort of extra special Patreon episode, and I got to meet him the other day. I want to say his name was Jake. I did tell him I was going to forget his name almost immediately. Definitely began with a J, though. And he had his Army of the Dead out, and it's beautifully painted. He's got the cool Aragorn with the flaming brand for Aragorn with the sword, which is one of my favorite Aragorns. And anyway, I just wanted to say it was great to meet you, and I wish I'd managed to grab some pictures of that army because it looks sweet. So if you ever want to upload any of them, we'd love to see them.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, very cool. That was the special episode Ben's talking about, is we've been doing some faction reviews over on the Patreon, so it was a request that we talk through, give our thoughts and feelings on the Army of the Dead. All right.
Indeed.
So that covers all of that, Ben. So now we're going to roll in to talking about the new edition. But before we roll into that, we've got to talk about one more thing, and that is, of course, our dear, dear sponsor, the Baron of Dice, who you can roll his dice if you desire. And if you want to start the new edition with some awesome new dice, we highly recommend checking out the Baron of Dice. They are perfectly balanced, hand-swirled resin dice with no micro bubbles, so they are guaranteed to roll sixes at least some of the time. That's a personal guarantee I make about them. And if you would like to get any of those, you can use the link in the description of wherever you're viewing or listening to this episode. And you can use our promo code, capital G, capital C, capital A, for a sweet discount on those dice. Definitely check that out.
Absolutely.
All right, with all of that aside...
On to the meat and potatoes.
Indeed. And that is, of course, the new edition, man. There's a new edition of Middle-earth Strategy Battle Games happening. And I have a feeling, I'm not sure, obviously, if you've watched the episode where I talk about the Rise of Angmar and the latest preview, about a few days after that, or I guess a week after that, there's been another awesome article released that sort of talks a little bit more about the new edition. And I can't remember if I said in that episode or not, but one of the things I'm really excited about is being very active in the scene of Middle-earth when there's a new edition coming around, because we didn't really play much in the previous editions, played a little bit, but it was this current incarnation of the MESBG that sort of brought us both back in, so it was already releasing and there was no like hype build up to it, so I'm super excited. I'm super excited for some hype build up.
Yeah, me too. I have to say I'm a teensy bit disappointed that the shelf life of the new Angmar supplement is going to be so short. I would have loved to have got it a year ago, but I'm so excited that that's what I'm disappointed about. I'm like, oh no, the shelf life of the Angmar supplement is really short. And, realistically, I wasn't ever going to get to play any of that stuff anyway. I don't play either of those armies. Maybe I'd have borrowed your Birder Legendary Legion, but, who knows? Maybe it'll still be in the new edition. You never know.
I mean, it's almost guaranteed to be in the new edition for sure. Obviously, it won't be a Legendary Legion. It'll be whatever they talk about. Mm-hmm. But I like, obviously it would be nice to have new releases and more stuff sooner. But they were pretty vocal, reasonably transparent and vocal about saying like, we're dealing with licensing issues. We're not sure what the deal is. We have all of this really cool stuff we're working on, but that's all pending on this licensing agreement. And that's, I think, one of the coolest things about the fact that there's a new supplement and then an announcement of a new edition, which is also tied into this new War of the Rohirrim movie, is that, like, very clearly to me, maybe I'm just entirely wrong, but I would be shocked. They have sorted out that licensing agreement. And that means we've got, another X number of years of Middle-earth strategy battle game, which is super, super cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Very exciting. Like I said, it's just a little disappointing to have gotten all hyped up about it, and now I'm hyped up about the next thing. I'm like, okay, it was cool. It's forgotten already. Sure. But the next thing is so much better that, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever. So we're talking about the article, Sam. The road goes ever on, and one of the first things that is mentioned in that article is we're doing away with special strikes. No more. There will be no more piercing and feinting and stabbing and whirling. Fantastic. And all the others. None.
It's so good.
Yeah.
I've been playing whatever new edition of Middle-earth for years. Special strikes are stupid. Because they're like, I think they're stupid. I think it wastes time. It's really annoying because everyone's always like, well, the blue ones are fainting, and there are only like 2 that are good, and it's just a pain to keep a track of. I don't think it was necessary. I think it's an improvement, big time. Yeah. I also think it's really cool that you can now convert your like army to be using whatever, and it doesn't, I can
weapons
now
don't matter anymore.
I can now do that sweet Fountain Court Guard army where half of them are modeled to have swords, and I'm not like, well, they're actually daggers because they have a dagger and spear, and I'm just, like, obviously spears, I assume are still going to be a thing, but...
Yeah, I assume a lot of the sort of special strikes are still going to be there, like Biffer out of Thorin's company, or was it Boffer? The one with the axe in his head, he can, like, elect to... Sure. That's still a special strike that you can do.
I wouldn't call that a special strike. That's a special rule, right?
Fair enough.
I mean, and they're definitely not going to... Well, and I'm going to say definitely a lot, and it could all be entirely wrong, but I'm just going to assume...
Wild speculation.
Right. They're not going to get rid of a rule like that because they also say in that article that they're going to add in more flavorful rules like Isildur being able to wield the shards of Narsil if Elendil dies, Sam being able to use his frying pan.
Right, right.
You know.
So I guess that's more sort of what I meant. Like, not everyday warriors are going to have access to special strikes, but Sam's going to have some sort of special strike or special rule that is
Sure. I just think it's a bit of a misnomer to ever call that a special strike, and
That's fair. That's fair.
It will be interesting to see how many, if they give a bunch of stuff to heroes like that, you know, is like, are these new profiles we're going to see be like so much fatter? They're just like every profile is going to have, like every hero is going to have a bunch of special rules, because the reality is or a lot of the new ones do, but like a lot of the old ones, like, you know, like Aragorn's got like 2 special rules on his profile. He counts as a banner, and the other one is the rules for Anduril, you know? Like,
yeah, that's a good point. We're going to get a lot more. Maybe that's why we're getting so many more books. They're trying to cram more information, more special rules. Well, not more books.
That's the other thing everyone's been talking about, how now you have to buy 3 books. I'm like, it's one additional book that's going to have, I mean, one assumes that they're going to continue releasing supplements at some point, and you'll add to it, so you'll get additional army lists and a few new models, but I'm just like, 3 books.
I mean, in my head, it's always been 3 books: Armies of the Lord of the Rings, Armies of the Hobbit, and the core rule books. And now there's just Armies of Middle Earth thrown on there, so now it's four books, you know.
Right.
But it does, I mean, if the profiles are fatter, though, then it's spread out over more books, and maybe that's part of the reasoning that it's broken up into. You don't have to bind, you know, doorstop at time.
Yeah, possibly so.
Who knows? More wild speculation.
You're right. Yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing. Like, you sort of jumped into talking about what's in that article, which I don't necessarily think is, obviously that's what we're talking about in this episode, but I certainly don't think we have to go through that article and be like, this is how we feel about this, and this, because everyone and their mother who has anything to do with Lord of the Rings is posting that online, whether it's a meme or every content creator.
We've all read it.
is posting videos and stuff about it, which we're obviously doing too, but we also didn't have a tournament between now and Nova, so we needed a filler episode, so this was fantastic.
No, we planned this. So planned.
Yeah, it's that insider knowledge into the mind of Jay.
Right.
But I think one of the things that's really funny about this whole situation is people. I mean, obviously, you go to the internet, and the people who tend to be most vocal are the negative people, right? Or, you know, that seems to be, it's the vocal minority, perhaps. But I think one of the interesting things is, as far as I'm aware, again, like I said, we weren't playing in the Hobbit era. As far as I'm aware, this is the first time that they've released a new edition while, like, Warhammer Community has been so, like, actively used, and, like, every week you're getting articles, every Sunday you know what's coming up, and, like, all of that stuff. So it's really funny, people, like, going, like, oh my, you know, like, I'm going to sell all my stuff, I'm not going to play this game, or whatever it may be, or just being like, oh, I'm worried. And I totally think it's reasonable to have some, like, unsurety around change, especially because I think for the most part the game is really good. Certainly the core rules for it are the things I'd change, absolutely. But like, otherwise, you know, they're being transparent about the shelf life of Rise of Angmar. Cool.
Yeah, so cool.
Don't want it, like, fine, don't buy it. You know, I'm gonna buy it because I'm a collector. I also think that I want to show that I want to support this game, and so I'm going to buy the book, and there's going to be cool shit in there to use for however long. And they're also, like, telling you in advance rather than being like, oh, by the way, next week there's a pre-order for the new edition of the Middle-earth strategy battle game, and you're like, oh, I love this game, I'm going to buy it. And you're like, the only reason I play this game is Special Strikes, can't wait to see what they've done with those. They're gone! You know, like what? So at least if that is the only reason you play the game, like, now you know, and you can abandon it and burn your army like all those Warhammer Fantasy battle players did forever ago. So I think the panic around it is rather silly. You know, it's like the game is dead, blah, 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 blah. And now it's like there's a new edition, and they're getting rid of special strength.
It's people though, and I wonder, you're just seeing the complaints, right? Are you seeing? Is it the same people complaining about, the game is dead? Oh, there's a new edition coming. Probably not.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Either way, it's funny. And if you were one of those people who complained, I'm sorry that that you've been upset or that this isn't what you were hoping for. And I think that's the thing, right? Is that like the good thing about it is that like, or we'll give it a positive spin. The people who are upset or worried are the ones, we'll say, who like really love the Middle Earth strategy battle game and really don't want to see it get changed in a way that isn't fun or whatever.
Yeah,
I would argue that has happened already. I think there is a lot, like we go to a good number of tournaments, certainly in the US, less so, and internationally it's quite hard to make. But the last like 6 to 12 months, I just think it's not been in a great spot as far as being like a fun experience to go and play.
No, and that seems to be true. I started listening to the latest Entmoot video where Harry takes, podcast episode where Harry takes the riders of Aomir to a GBHL 100 event purely to prove that you can still go to one of those events with something silly and have a good time. So if he feels the need to prove that, it's also not just an issue here on the East Coast. It's, if it, we feel that you got to show up with some wacky weird list or just be like, I'm going to lose my games because anyway. The state of the game seems to have lost its way just a touch.
Yeah, which I think is another thing they talk about in that article. To circle back through to that is the removing of the allies I assume removing of the allies matrix and like giving you these legion sheets, like in I believe it was the One Ring rules, which was previous to the Hobbit. And so you're not going to have these stupid soup armies, which I think is really cool because like we're all playing this game based on a limited number of books that you'll then like in this edge case scenario, whatever fought with whatever. So now it's a legal army, and then you're like getting these really weird armies with like Galadriel and
Denethor.
Yeah, or like, Theodred and Galadriel, and you're like, Aomir like freaked out when he found out the three hunters had been in the Golden Wood, and Theodred definitely died before they were like, hey, elves are cool again.
Right, exactly. So. Yeah, I've definitely, I think that's one of the main points of contention, things that people are worried about, and absolutely, I don't want to invalidate anyone's fears or feelings. It's, you love the game, get stressed about it. You'll be Team Red, I'll be Team Blue. There we go. I'm the nice one. No, but I've heard people say, well, it takes away my ability to do what if Boromir had survived and made it to Minas Tirith and like met up with King Aragorn, or like what if X, Y, and Z? And that is a valid argument. That's totally fair. But I think most of the weird soup armies people are playing, they're not exploring a weird like, hey, I really love these two characters. I really wish that Boromir had met up with Gandalf the White or whatever. And I think they'd have had a great time. People are not exploring these weird, wacky soup lists for that reason. They're exploring these weird, wacky soup lists because they're like min-maxing and trying to get the most competitive, most whatever twist on it. And that's where it's like, okay, well, you just threw theme out the window. And I appreciate that you tried to come up with a theme. Maybe you called it... No, not naming names. Anyway.
No, I mean, that's the thing is it's a... build competitive list afterwards, and maybe I'll pretend that I can justify it for some dumb reason later.
Right.
And like that's fine. And the reality is we play at tournaments, and so we can't truly be upset that people are trying to be competitive at these things.
No.
But I like the idea of like I think they brought army bonuses in to try and encourage people to be themey. They brought Legendary Legions in and gave them additional special rules for the same reason. Unfortunately, there has been definitely a power creep, and some of them are just like, unfortunately, not fun and better than others. But there has always been a push in theme, and now people are mostly deciding like, oh, the army bonuses aren't good enough to justify like not putting whoever
Why
into
here?
the yeah. And if that means I can't do my silly fourth age trees and hobbit army at a tournament, like, oh well, I had a good time with it. That was fun. It was not very good, and like, I could be upset that my bad army is no longer legal, or I could be like, Ben, do you want to play a game? I want to play my stupid fourth age hobbit army. Let's play this game at home, and because there's nothing stopping you from doing that, and that's the thing. Like, if you love special strikes, like, play with special strikes at home. I've heard a few people being like, oh, I'm sure there will be like old edition Lord of the Rings events run, and I'm like, if you're running events, please don't do that. I think it's so silly, like, just like we're gonna have way more new people coming in. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Would make sense. I was gonna knock on wood, but it's a fingers crossed situation. And now you're just gonna like throw that confusion out there. I think it's like maybe not the greatest thing. Like, oh yeah, come to this event. It's Lord of the Rings, not the new one though. But if you love special strikes, or like there's the change of the in the way thing, which the reality
so happy
is
about that.
right, because it's just I was like, whatever. I'll roll whatever you tell me to, opponent. So if you really care, I will pretend to care, but I don't. Just tell me that what I need. But if you really love, special strikes,
always will 5 up in the way.
Right. Have your special strikes are back on the menu tournament, and like play a new game, but include special strikes.
But make it WYSIWYG. Must be WYSIWYG.
Yes.
You want your special strikes? None of this. All my Rohan warriors all have axes. Ben.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think I'm overall, I am just like really, really excited about it.
Oh.
I will say, if you're upset about the shelf life of Angmar, Ben, the only thing I am potentially like, I'll use upset about, I'm slightly less excited about, we'll say, is I was really excited to see what the Hill Troll Intelligence special rule was going to be. I was like, this sounds really cool. And then they talk about how there's going to be this new characteristic intelligence. And I'm like, oh, it's just going to be a bonus to that, and like, who knows? Maybe they'll add some other stuff, because the only thing they talked about in the article is like charging ring bearers. Totally makes sense. I like to tell people my Uruk-hai berserkers could smell them really well, but it does make sense that just because they're courage 7 they can charge it way easier. Like, that's kind of silly. But if that's the only rule I can think of,
right?
That intelligence.
But yeah, wild speculation. What if it affects your Maelstrom roll? You can use it to affect the
I mean, that could be cool. But like, so unless they add some more stuff to the rules that makes intelligence more than just if you run into a ring bearer, I'll be, I'm just like, oh, I want my hill trolls to be really cool. And I'm really
educated hill trolls,
right? Well, actually, I'll have in the hills we go to school.
Model one of them, big old book, the Lore Master.
Right. Yeah, so that's the only thing that I'm like, but I am excited to see what that does mean. I can come up with ideas of what would make you intelligent. Maybe you need to be intelligent to swim, Ben. I don't know. That was the other thing. I was like, I could see you maybe making the terrain checks a characteristic check, but intelligence would be a weird one.
No, the terrain checks, I think, is one of the great parts about the game.
Yes,
that doesn't get changed. Like 1, you fail. 6, you really succeed. 2 to 5 is okay.
All right, you're doing just fine.
It's intuitive, and it's easy, and they're all exactly the same.
Yeah.
Except swimming, where there are modifiers to it for having stuff, which makes sense.
Right. Yeah. So the other thing I'm curious to get your opinion on, Ben, is we've had the Lord of the Rings strategy battle game as it was for years, and then it was, I think it was technically still the Lord of the Rings, but it was just a One Ring rulebook. But then the new movie, the Hobbit series, came out, and it turned into the Hobbit strategy battle games.
Yep.
Do we think we're renaming, and then it went to the Middle Earth strategy battle game? Are we renaming it to the War in Rohan strategy battle game? No. I don't think so. But
that's an interesting question. I don't think it's going to be a War in Rohan strategy battle game. I think it's going to be the Middle Earth strategy battle game. I think MESBG.
I think so too.
Is here to stay. It's a bit of a mouthful to say. Even the acronym is but Yeah, no, I don't think we're renaming it. An interesting question though.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the thing is there are plenty of interesting questions. All right, Ben. So we know as far as the rules go. So we're gonna get into I'm into wild speculation.
Oh,
The
let's
other, the
go.
other the other thing we can talk about is that some models are going away. Bummer if you're like really into whatever goes away. My curiosity will be whether it will be like full ranges. Like I think everyone's kind of like Conda's going away, which I'm like, bummer. I get it. If you really like that is all and you own it, it's disappointing. Good news is there are legacy profiles for them, so unless you only play Warhammer World events, like you're probably good.
Yeah, I know everyone here is going to run. It's just going to be legacy, unless one of the legacy legions or groups is like way overpowered. They're all
Yeah,
going to be legacy
yeah.
ornaments.
Not that I run events, but I would consider doing it none, just because I'm a big fan of supporting the main. Anyway, it doesn't matter. That's neither here nor there. But so we could talk about that. So what I was saying is I'm interested to see whether like the Avenger bolt thrower. There was no bolt throwers in the movie. I don't think they're even really referenced in the book. Could be wrong. Will that go? And like the Knight of the White Tower, like will there be some profiles from each army list going? How much of it will package? How much of that will packaging affect? So like Knight of the White Tower is also in the box with a banner, a captain, and a hornblower. Like, are they going to repackage that, or are they just going to be like, no, you get Knight of the White Tower because we're just going to keep churning out that box, So
That's a really interesting point. I hadn't really thought about it on the context of packaging. I was sort of surprised by the list of things that people seem to think are going. I say going, legacy, whatever.
yeah.
As far as I'm aware, Games Workshop seems like they've just sort of renewed their rights. There's no way that they've given up the ability to make and add their own stuff. Otherwise, half of the new heroes they've just released are like, and these new Angmar guys, they're all gone.
Yeah.
Did you want to play with these new models you bought in the new edition? Haha, no, because we invented them. They're gone. So there's no way that they're just losing the rights to make their own additions to the game. So the Avenger Bolt Thrower, I mean, the only reason to get rid of it is because it's like old sculpts and you're going to re-update the Warriors of Minas Tirith plastic kit, which would be awesome.
Or the reasoning would be that I don't think it's currently available and they're not planning on bringing it back, and they just it's a game that's been around since 2001, right?
Sure.
Maybe 2002. Yeah. It has a huge number of kits, and at a certain point, especially if you're adding more, you're going to have to pull some.
That's right.
So are you just like, well, this isn't in the book or the movie, we're just going to get rid of it, because rather than just removing entire ranges, like everyone, like I kind of want to keep Mahood Raiders, so I want to keep those, move those to Far Harad, got to get rid of something. Gondor, you have a bunch of options, lose a bolt thrower,
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. I don't know. I hadn't really thought about it in terms of. I think you're right. It's probably more likely to be in terms of like packaging and. Yeah, I don't know where you draw the line, because there's definitely some great stuff that they've created, and there's some great stuff that is in the books and films, and there's also some stuff that I would quite happily be like, that can go.
Right.
And it does. You're right. It's got a huge number of kits, and I suppose part of the way of dealing with that. I know a lot of their specialist games, people are complaining about the lack of support in terms of product. Like I went to buy X, Y, and Z for something, one of Games Workshop's other specialist games, and it's out of stock, which we as Middle Earth players have definitely experienced. So maybe if there are fewer kits, you can keep more of them in stock. I don't know.
I have also. I mean, I don't. I've heard. I'm going to say I've heard. I may have made this up, but that part of a consideration in whether they kept the license or not would be more support and a full team. And if that was part of the deal, and they're getting rid of stuff because they know that they have to do more consistent releases and not just like a character, if it's stuff's going to new multi-part plastics, like all of that kind of stuff, or even more Forge World resin, like the Easterling or the new Warriors of Khandoom kits that are sort of multi-part, smaller boxes. That could certainly be a reason as well, where we just can't produce it all and we are now stepping up. We're going to have more production slots on the calendar year for Middle Earth, so we have to get rid of some stuff. But
Well, if I was a game designer, Sam, I would definitely, having just sat here and thought about it while you were talking, I would definitely start with siege weapons, because siege weapons kind of suck in the game. I think they're annoying. The whole one shot your big monster with a catapult, one shot your big hero mechanic is kind of a bummer. Out with the siege weapons. Is that realistic? I don't know.
I mean,
Storm on Helm's Deep definitely needs its giant crossbows. So
yeah, I mean, there are only 3 in the movies, right? There's the ballista, the Iron Hills ballista, and the trebuchet. I think those are the only ones you actually actively see in the movies. Oh, and the
Troll catapult.
Mortal
catapult.
Yeah, siege towers. Bring them in. All right. So that's sort of my opinion on Legacy. Like, that is the one that people are like complaining or like worried, upset about. That I do understand, just because it is a bummer to have bought models, painted them, and lose them, and not be able to like always use them. But it's still better than what they have done in previous years as a company, which is just like, no, we're not, that thing's gone and there are no rules for it. I mean, the fact that there's a new characteristic means you can't just use the old profiles in the new one, but they're like, no, we're gonna give you profiles for it all. They're just never gonna get updated, or they're not gonna get updated. I doubt they'd get FAQ'd. Maybe they will, because I think they do for the old world. But probably don't actually. But they're not getting any new models. So
yeah, I have to say the one that's going around the internet that would bum me out the most is if Khazad-dûm largely went Legacy, and I could see it going that way for the same reason that you said. They're not in the movies.
Yeah,
I mean, they're in Dead Dwarves, right? They're obviously in the books, but sort of just implied and mentioned. And as far as like the Age of Durin and everything, it's more sort of appendix stuff. So it would be to me that'd be a real shame if that goes, because it's pretty quintessential Lord of the Rings, the folk of Durin in the Mines of Moria.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree, that would be a shame. But I could also see it going, or I could see you losing like some number of those, But
no King's Champion or whatever, you lose some of the warrior profiles in game. Maybe Dwarf Warriors can now have spears. Hurrah!
Yeah. So I don't know if there's anything else you want to talk about the Legacy stuff wise. I definitely don't think it's worth trying to consider. Give you our random opinions on what we think might go or might stay. I just really think only there's a select group of people who know right now, and we are not in that select group of people. Or if we are, we can't say.
No, it's not actually a part of the game that I'm particularly interested in wildly speculating on, largely because my collection is, I think, pretty safe.
Yeah, fair. All right, well, I want to get into some wild speculation, Ben.
Yeah, let's do it.
And I want to both speculate on what we think may change, and I want to know what we hope may change. My biggest hope has already happened. I was pretty sure when it was first announced, I was like, get rid of special strikes. I should find that text, because I'm pretty sure it was like weeks before. So I'm 1 for 1 right now. But yeah. So what are some things that you think they might change? And what is something or some things that you would love to see change?
I think most
or even stay the same. Like, what's something you're like, those terrain tests need to stay the same. They're the best.
Yeah, the terrain tests. I can't really think of any of the main rule sections that I would particularly change, with the exception of monsters. I don't know quite how you fix monsters. One of my personal ideas is just to give them every turn they get a free point of might that they can spend only for the monster.
Yeah.
Then a troll is all of a sudden much more scary. He's fight 7 and just needs to roll a 5 on his 3 dice. That's pretty good odds, rather than needing to roll a 6 to win every time. I don't know. Or maybe you just reduce the cost of monsters, something to off, because they're awesome. They're a big part of the films. They're a big part of the books. They're supposed to be these big scary things, and they suck unless they have might, will, and fate. In which case, they're heroes, which is a different. That fixes them and solves the problem. A troll chieftain is way, way, way better than a troll.
Yeah. Sure. I think that's an interesting, because another thing in this article they talk about is making the fight value more granular.
Yeah, I'm excited for that.
I am very excited. I'm looking at Fight 5 Urukai here. It's going to be awesome.
Everyone's getting what they want, Sam, which is Fight 6 AMR. Everyone, I didn't think he necessarily needed it, but everyone was like Fight 6 AMR, Fight 6.
It's gonna be awesome when
guys.
he says Fight 5.
That'll be hilarious.
Yeah,
or just
like,
when Fight 6 becomes the new Fight 5, and everyone's like, he needs to be Fight 7.
Right. So that's the thing. Is like I do wish that they could have or decided to move it past a cap at 10. If you capped it at like 20, you could have like such a big range, but I also think that would be like everyone would be like, what?
Maybe 15, maybe.
I think it doesn't matter. You could essentially make it unlimited, and it just doesn't matter. You just basically set the bottom where like Hobbit Militia are fight 1, and the Balrog's 30, and you're like somewhere in between here. You stack. But yeah, no, I agree. I would love to see something happen with monsters. I think one of the things that I could see happening, and I wouldn't hate it, is making the base sizes more granular as well. So not everything's 25s, 40s with some weird, because there's like some weird, there's a few 50s, right? The ogres, Azog.
I think those are the only ones.
And then there are a bunch of 60s, and then there are some weird ovals. But I would happily see, heroes, put those heroes on 32s, because first off, or even 28s, because they look freaking awesome. I'm working on a Halberad right now. I'm doing some resculpting on him, and he's like stuck in a 32 slotted base, and it looks so badass. But I think that is one thing that makes monsters bad, is they tend to be, or like the cave trolls on 40 mil bases are so much better than the Mordor trolls, for some other reasons as well, but partially because they fit into tighter spots and stuff. So if you made them more, if you put a wider range of base sizes in the game, I think that potentially could help monsters out.
I'm excited for some points adjustments, honestly. That's the biggest thing. Like, the rules, and I don't see the rules changing hugely, but I'm really excited for some points adjustments. There are some characters that I want to play, that I'm playing with, that just are too overcosted, or when you compare them to the new ones, or I don't know. But I'm really excited for some points adjustments. It'll be cool just to see where we end up, what are going to be, a Fountain Court still going to be the best bang for your buck, or are they going to sort of fall a little bit by the wayside in comparison to some other stuff?
You can only have 4 of them in an army.
No shield.
Yeah, I think that is really cool. I like the idea that they're looking through and rebalancing every profile, whether it's just a points increase, changing the fight value, like whatever it is, adding some additional special rule, like, I mean, Rangers of the North, right?
Oh,
I think
God.
Or Dunedain, whichever one, you compare them to like Beornings, and you're just like, can I use a counts as Beorning army, because
this just feels so bad.
Yeah, so I definitely think that's gonna be pretty cool. I'm trying to think if there's what else I think is gonna change. I wouldn't be shocked if Maelstrom got changed, because they talk about how they're listening to the, taking feedback from the community and fans, and I think that's one of the huge advantages to having a rules writer who like shows up and wins a lot of tournaments, is he still plays a lot of tournaments, so you know, is in touch with what people either want or like the competitive scene. So
it's funny. I used to really not like Maelstrom, because like, if you get the first turn, it can be really bad. I'm on the other side of the fence now. I'm like, whatever, Maelstrom's great. I'll take first turn. I just need to prepare to get, and if you charge, honestly, I have found with Maelstrom, and this is now going to become irrelevant very soon, and that's great, but is that if you set up right on that first turn, your opponent is either going to pop up behind you and you can control where they are because you're blocking them in, or they're going to show up not behind you, in which case you've got the time you need to like rank up properly.
I don't mind Maelstrom. I don't think we need to, if we're talking about potential changes, I certainly don't think we need to justify why we'd like it or should stay the same. But I would not be, if we're wildly speculating about things that might change, I would not be surprised if Maelstrom was something that changed, and I could see it even just being a priority role, and you just alternate back and forth Maelstrom and Warband.
That'd be quite interesting. But I'm excited for the new scenarios. I mean, it sounds like we're getting rid of the match play guide, and from one of the articles, whether it was this one or the one previously, they, I think it's this one, they just mentioned we're getting all new scenarios. So
Oh, do
Hopefully,
they?
it's more than just the six. I think this edition that we're currently playing started with about 6 scenarios, and or was
12.
it 12? It started with 12.
No.
It'd be cool to keep the whole 18 that we have. Maybe that's an unrealistic hope, but
I wouldn't be. I bet we get 12 in the rules, and then there'll be a match play something coming out. I would be super psyched if they did, like an additional, if they like did a match play guide every couple years and had some,
that'd be
cycle
cool.
through scenarios. I think that'd be super cool.
That's a great way to change the meta without like,
Yeah.
here's the new thing.
Yeah, because then you won't get into like the veto system where people are like, man, this one sucks. You're like, well, this season Contest of Champions is out, and you play through these ones. Yeah, so I think that would be cool. One of the things that I really hope they change is like some of the magical powers. Paralyze obviously is the one that I cannot stand. I think it's awful. I think it makes for a very negative game play experience a lot of the time. So I would be very happy to see that get changed. I'm not sure why. So I mean, that's a hope.
The easy one is just change the way that die roll works. Rather than rolling an additional die for each model that's in base contact with you, just +1 to the die roll.
For sure. Yeah.
Because now 2 friends in base contact with you, you're coming back on a 4, you got 50-50 odds, and you can spend might on that. That feels so much less oppressive.
Yeah. Anything else, Ben? What do you hope? What's something that you said?
So we know that they're not legendary legions anymore, right? And they're not factions. They're taking it's sort of something in between. They're condensing a faction down and being like, if you want to take these characters, here is the legendary faction or the faction. I mean, I don't know quite what we're calling them.
I think legions is
legions.
That was how it was. That's what they were previously in that Wandering Era rules, I believe.
Yeah. And I don't know, I mean, is each one going to have like a little bit of a special rule to it, or is it largely just going to be a list of characters that you can take? But either way, I think I'm excited for that because there are a lot of moments. I really have wanted a Defenders of the White City legendary legion led by Gandalf the White. And I mean, in the current edition, right, they all get dumb special rules, so there should be something silly where Denethor can get set ablaze. The turn your opponent controls him, you can set him ablaze, but you can do it voluntarily and set people nearby you. I don't know, turn him into a kamikaze Denethor. That's my dream, Sam. Kamikaze Denethor. Not that that's going to happen in the new edition, but I am excited for just a revisiting of a lot of those moments. I mean, it says it explicitly in that article. If 2 characters are seen fighting together on screen, we have made sure that you can do that. So there's either just a crap load of these lists, or they are still open enough that you can do things with them, and either way that's exciting.
I think there's going to be a bunch of them, those lists. Like I think you're going to get for an example, like I think you're going to get a Minas Tirith army list where you can take like Gandalf, Faramir, tin cans, all of this other stuff, and also the 3 hunters, or ghosts,
Battle of Pelennor Fields style.
Right. Yeah. And I think there'll probably be like a Rohan equivalent, and so like I think I'm imagining if the book is set up similar to how the armies of books are set up now, we'll get Minas Tirith, blam, here are all your profiles, and then you're gonna get like 4 or 5 of these legions to pick from. And maybe there's sort of a generic-y Minas Tirith one. Maybe there's like the Rangers one. Maybe there's like the Rangers of Ithilien one. Maybe there's like Defenders of Osgiliath. Where you sort of like are limited. And I don't know whether there'll be special rules for each of those or not.
It'd be cool if they each had special rules, but then we get into like they're trying to streamline the game and it's potentially harder to balance. I don't know, but that's pretty exciting. I was just thinking about like other changes that I would like to see made. I would like to see some way to make Heroic Challenge relevant. Because it's kind of a cool idea.
I could honestly see them getting rid of some heroic actions. Actually, I could see challenge go. I mean, there's sort of part of me that's like, if we're really simplifying the game, you just go back to move, shoot, and fight. I'm not saying that's what I want, but I'm not sure. Like, you know, like the own defense and strike are the only other two that like really get used, right? So you know,
Yeah, strength is
sure
pretty rare.
I'm
I've
sure there are
contemplated calling a
cases.
strength, but never done it.
Right. I'm sure there are cases where people could, tell us like, "Oh, I had really great success with this or that," but I wouldn't be surprised if they're like, we're gonna get rid of accuracy. I guess people sometimes call,
Yeah.
but I could see getting rid of that.
Resolve, I would call if the hero that called it could move after calling it, but you
Right.
can't.
Yeah.
So it's like, ay, it feels bad.
Yeah.
Especially if you're taking first turn, if you're moving first.
Yeah.
Feels less bad if you're moving second and getting charged.
I was just having a thought. I could see an intelligent characteristic being somehow being included in the determination of whose like heroic action goes first.
Ooh, that would be really interesting. I feel like it would suck for evil though, because surely all the orcs are dumbasses and all the elves are geniuses.
Yeah. Yes. I mean that's going to be the case. Just period. Even if it's just finding ring bearers, it's like, oh boy. But then when I call a heroic move with Burda and his hill troll intelligence makes him higher than Elrond, it's going to be glorious.
Yeah.
Because I was, I could see if you were going to do that, right? If I was like, I want to make intelligence more relevant, I'm going to include it how it works off in a heroic move. You could do it basically like if your intelligence, whoever has the higher intelligence, the move off goes to them on like 3, 4, 5, or 6. Or,
Okay, sure.
Basically, it's an elven blade. It's
an
an
elven blade.
That's mind razor for
Yeah.
moves.
That's a little bit less oppressive than just like from what you first said. I was just picturing like it's just intelligence order. You've got intelligence 7, your move goes.
Oh yeah.
I'd be like, that feels bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what is.
It would have to be the intelligence of the model calling the move, right? So you can't just be where you're like, oh, I really need to go first, and my captain, but I'm going to use the captain's thing. And so I don't know. I could certainly see that. I don't think that'll happen because that seems like a pretty sweeping, a pretty large change. But if you wanted to make it a more relevant stat that people really cared about, that would be the one.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. I can, So monsters, I definitely would love to change. Paralyze, obviously, something needs to happen with that, and I think everyone can agree that it's a shit-ass power to be on the receiving end of.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't know. I should have thought about some more things.
Two-handed weapons, I kind of would love to see. The main Discord and I had a chat through about two-handed weapons a little while ago, and we came up with something that was like pretty okay, but it's essentially a special strike for two-handed weapons.
They should just all have the broadsword special rule. If you're a two-handed weapon and you roll a 6, you stay the 6.
Get the -1. Yeah, that would be fine. Just something, because they feel really cool. It's awesome. That +1 to wound is really powerful, but the -1 to your dual roll is just so bad. Yeah. To the point where there are characters that have a two-handed weapon and burly and no other weapon, and you're like, this makes this guy unplayable. Or not unplayable, but like a bit of a...
You mean it has a two-handed weapon but not burly?
Yes, sorry, did I say it has burly?
Yeah.
Looking at like Balin out of Defenders of Erebor and Grimbold, really. Balin has a two-handed mace. I was all excited to take him with Gandalf the Grey, and I was like, oh, he's got a two-handed mace, that sucks.
Balin...
Out of Defenders of Erebor, the like when they've reclaimed the mountain, Erebor Balin, the profile.
Yeah, and you were going to take him with
only has a two-handed mace. He doesn't have a dagger or anything, so he can only two-hand.
You were going to take him? What take him with? I'm very confused.
You take him with Gandalf, and you revive strengthen will on Balin, so you get the bonus to priority. The Longbeard special rule as many times as you want. Is it a good option, Sam? No, but was I excited about the interaction briefly? Yes.
Well, then just take him out of Thorin's company.
Yeah, but I was big into Defenders of Erebor because they've got heavy armor and they've taken back the mountain, Sam. They're home now.
If the whole point is to manipulate priority, you don't care if he's got a two-handed mace.
Yeah, that's fair. Anyway, that was just silly things. It'd be cool if two-handed weapons didn't mean you needed burly or mastercrafted for them to be worth anything.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's that. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they all got like a broadsword, the kind of special rule.
Yeah, that's a great fix.
I was gonna say something else, I was going to move us.
But I feel
yeah.
like they must have fixed. Okay, maybe I'm wrong. But they just made this new king of Gondor, Aenor,
Yeah.
who has this like I will be the king of challenges special rule.
Sure.
But heroic challenge is laughable in the current edition. I wonder if they have come up with something for heroic challenge, and they're going to keep that sort of theme about him in the new edition. Maybe because
what's the special rule about challenges?
You're gonna make me go find the article.
Like, has to declare one or something, right?
I'll has to accept them.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, but he also in the previewed rules kind of gets around that by being able to like set his fight value as well.
Right.
So,
Right.
Yeah. All interesting stuff. All wildly speculative. Maybe before this episode releases, because it will release on a Friday. We'll probably get another Road Goes Ever On and On article, and all of these will turn out to be correct, I'm sure. Please note that this was recorded on August 19th. So when you're listening to it after that, and we're right about a bunch of stuff, you can be like, "Holy moly, those guys get it!" Hire them, or send them free stuff. Games Workshop, either way.
So I have a question for you, Sam. As an Urukai player, a veteran of the Isengard, you've enjoyed it. You've come up, the Fight 5 meta crept in, came back down. You set it aside. Specifically mentioned in this article is that Lurtz is going to be able to shrug off wounds. Yes. What do you think that's going to look like?
That's going to be like
wild speculation. If you were writing that rule, is it like Goroth's thing? He just grabs another Urukai on a 2+.
No. It's a feel no pain. It's a
bear save.
Or Ben, it's a 4+ because he's fucking Lurtz.
Yeah, right. So it's a 4+, but maybe he can only use it when he's on his last wound, or you just use it like he has to go
all the time.
All the time. Is it the first you just save that fate for emergencies?
No, I think it's going to be like a Goblin King blubbery mass. It's going to be like impervious to pain kind of thing every time he takes a wound.
Because in the film he gets stabbed in the leg with that knife.
Yeah,
his arm cut off. And then he gets impaled by the sword, and he's still like crawling towards Aragorn, like, give me more, and then finally gets his head cut off.
Yeah.
So
it's going to be great. Yeah, it's funny talking about Isengard. One of the things, and the legions, however those sheets work, one of the things that the time that will probably affect me the most is trying to put Saruman into Isengard lists, because none of the named characters, with the exception of Lurtz and like telling him you do not know pain, you do not know fear, he doesn't like interact with any of the other ones. So, if you only get Saruman, Grima, and generic orcs, that would be disappointing because I do love a good Saruman the White. But if they also change and fix magic and make it slightly less powerful, then or they make Lurtz way cooler or like whatever, then who's to say?
I honestly don't think that magic needs a lot of fixing. I think the problem with it, this is just my opinion, is the availability of cheap spellcasters. So, like, running into Saruman is not too big of a problem because he's 200 points. He's a big point sink, and sure, it's magic and it's powerful, but there's just one of him. But when you've got like when you're looking down the barrel of 3 or more spellcasters, it's like even if they're all sort of shitty, like 3 shatters from the Black Shield Shamans, or like
they're going away for sure.
A bunch of transfixes from generic ring wraiths starts to be like, okay, this is oppressive.
Yeah. I think the thing with magic is that and it's good because it gives you an answer to everything, but it just stops you from doing stuff. Like, I love Sorcerous Blast. I love Sorcerous Blasting an enemy model into their big monsters combat and knocking them all down. And that's how it works. It doesn't matter what model they hit in that combat, they all fall over. I'm sorry if you think it's done the other way, but it's not. I think that's awesome. But I could see being on the receiving end of me doing that after playing that army for like 5 tournaments in a row. Probably not the most fun. No. Like, you can, probably the game where I played Hunter in a game and knocked his Balrog over like 3 or 4 times, and he just laughed it off and it was hilarious. But I could definitely see that I also knocked somebody's Gulavar over with a Gandalf the Grey, and they got quite upset about it. And, so like, I that is because there's not much you can do.
I mean,
you're like, what? I have to charge in and then move all of my troops away from.
yes.
And then you get the weird lines of where it's like, well, he's got 10 inches, so you like, it's really hard to completely avoid.
Yeah.
Again, I don't think they'll change magic because I think you're right. I think it's mostly pretty reasonable. But there are just situations where like 9 ring raids are just like awesome. You know, everything is dead.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't hate it if that Legendary Legion disappeared in that capacity. If you want to run the 9, if Legendary Legions aren't a thing anymore, they're just these Legion lists and don't have a bucket load of special rules.
Yeah.
And you want to run the 9, that's fine, but it'd be great if it wasn't this, like... I mean, even so, just 9 generic ring raids could be pretty rough.
Yeah. So...
I do think it's interesting, though. We talked earlier about the community sort of hitting this, like, uber competitive, or not uber competitive, but very sort of min-maxed army lists. Remember when the 9 came out and it was played, and sort of as a community, we all were just like, don't play this because it sucks. Like, no one banned it at tournaments, but there was definitely just like, everyone knew that if you took it to a tournament, you were kind of an ass.
Yeah.
Which was great. We like no, it was never banned at a tournament, but I definitely remember people being like, yeah, I just wouldn't play that against someone because it's not fun.
Yeah. It's just interesting that
what happened.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was an army list that was presented and seen as like so negative to play against, but people just aren't. There's yeah, I don't know. It's just been I think it's been a weird mentality shift towards away from theme and into that. I'm looking at the time, Ben. We've been going for almost an hour now, and I do want to talk about the fact that they specifically mentioned the war in Rohan, or the war of the Rohirrim, and what we think that means. I think we both probably agree that means there's a new starter set coming.
Oh, please, Sam, let it mean plastic warriors. I will gladly repaint all my mounted Rohan guys. I'll do another 42 Rohan
because there are plastic warriors, Ben, so it would be a redo.
Yes, okay, I'm sorry. New plastic warriors. New plastic warriors. The 4-year-old resin's great. It's awesome, but I would just love to see the range get some new plastic sculpts, because I mean, like some of the new Lizardmen stuff that came out for Warhammer: The Old World or Age of Sigmar or whatever faction you currently play, the game you currently play Lizardmen in, they look so cool.
I mean, all the new stuff they produce is awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think if there is a new army or there is a new 2-player starter box, which I assume there will be, because for every other game they make that I can think of, I can't think of one that there hasn't been. If it's the War of the Rohirrim, it seems like it would make sense from what I understand that movie is going to be, is it's going to be Rohan and Dunland, though there have been some images I've seen with like Harad in there.
Yeah, so that was weird.
So we'll see. But as I understand it, would be Rohan and Dunland, and it's not going to be Forge World Resin because
that's a crazy starter box.
They've never done that, and I can't see it making sense. So it's probably going to be plastic. There is no plastic Dunlanding stuff, so I think if it is Rohan and Dunland, it's an almost guaranteed plastic Warriors of Dunland.
And can you imagine putting shiny new multi-part plastic Warriors of Dunland in a box?
It would be brutal. I do think that we might be in a time when we're getting some new plastic warriors. I remember 2 years ago now when they did that preview, we had that list of stuff that was like coming up for changes as potential, or as like from a reputable source, we'll say, and one of them was multi-part elves, plastic elves, multi-part plastic orcs, and I think Warriors of Numenor doesn't seem to fit with that War of the Rohirrim starter, but maybe that's good news, and maybe that means we'll be getting some more multi-part plastic models.
That'd be so cool. You got to think. I mean, there's got to be. I mean, maybe they just take the current Osgiliath starter box and just bung a new book in there and be like, "Here you go." Yeah. They could do that. That would be a bit of a shame, especially since they've hyped up the war in Rohan.
Yeah. I think you're more likely to get a like Rohan Isengard old models with new book. Yeah, I don't know, but if we're wildly speculating, I think it means we're getting new plastic Dunlendings and probably new plastic Rohan of some sort in a box.
And then the ball is rolling from there.
Yeah.
It's coming.
All,
It's
all
more.
it's all
There's
happening.
going to be new plastic orcs, which is going to be a dream come true because you can make orcs into anything.
Yeah, and Ben, and it's gonna, whether it's new plastic or not, it's gonna mean Helm is getting some named hero friends. It's gonna be Helm and his like 3 daughters, and it's gonna be freaking awesome. And they're gonna be all of this new.
It's going to be the exact same Legendary Legion, but it's going to be Bard special rule. So to have his mighty hero and 3 heroic combats, his 3 daughters are going to need to be on the board. And it's going to become this game of fathers taking their children to war again.
No, Ben, but these are grown daughters ready to marry. These are shield maidens of Rohan. They're not some urchins living in Lake Town.
No,
So
no,
at the very
no
least,
puddle
we're
urchins
gonna,
for you, huh?
at the very least, we're gonna have a Dernhelm that's within 6 inches of Helm. He gets bananas.
That's exciting. That's a good point. I hadn't thought about that, but you're right. It absolutely means that Helm Hammerhand has some named heroes to come play with. That's so exciting.
It's gonna be great. And
Not
he's
to mention
gonna
our
get
cool new mini.
Yeah,
I love the
potentially.
current Helm. It's a great miniature, but he is in that era of guys
Yeah,
looking over their shoulder, which is nice to. Just move past them.
Here we go, Ben. Here's some more wild speculation. There's going to be a Helm Hammerhand army. We're going to get some new stuff, and one of his special rules is at the start of the game, he's going to pick an enemy hero model who's trying to marry his daughter, and he gets like hatred against that model because that's what happens. That's what starts the war of the Rohirrim. Is Helm's daughter's supposed to be married off to some Dunlending chief's son, and Helm like punches him out and kills him, and then it all goes sideways real fast.
Yeah.
My man, Helm. When your hands are hammers, Ben, everything's a nail.
Yeah. He's just allergic to the cold.
That's true. Same with Arvin Dewey. They're not kings of men. Don't do well in the frozen colds.
No. Do not leave out in the cold. Will go
Yeah.
bad. We'll lose honor. We'll lose the line of their forefathers.
But yeah. So I'm wildly excited. I've said it many times, but I think it's so cool to be.
I mean, when we read that first article, I was like, okay, Rise in Angmar, new edition coming. Surely we're looking at like a year, 6 months of the outside, and then no, and then like boom. I mean, I guess it is still 6 months. It's August, December, 6 months from now, but it feels like it's like, whoa, that's so soon.
First off,
it's not 6 months. You're right.
4.
I can't do math. It's 4 months. That's why I feel so much closer.
Second off, I think it's going to be November. I think I saw somebody post like Warhammer World's schedule or something, and they announced they're closed for 3 days at the end of October, or closed to the public. Which this person was speculating that for some of like the other games they've released, like they did the Horus Heresy one, probably 40k and Age of Sigmar as well. They did like an influencers weekend where they brought like influencers to Warhammer World and like let them play the game and do all this stuff. And it was like a couple weeks before the release of the game. So they were saying that like this could be that for Middle Earth. I think it's going to pre-order, if not release, on Throne of Skulls weekend, which is like late November. And maybe it pre-orders, but if you're there, you can buy it. So that's kind of what I assume, which is a bit of a bummer because we can't get to Warhammer World very easily.
I know we used to live right there. Case,
if it pre-orders on like, I think it's like the 23rd or something. It's right around Thanksgiving if you're living in the US, because I considered going and I was like, whew, can't go to that. So I think it may pre-order then, which means it will be released before Christmas. I think that also gives them, if it releases earlier than December, they've said that we're not getting a new FAQ in August. And that would give them, like, if it was released and playable in November, that would give them 3 months to get a new FAQ, because they've said there will be one in February for the new edition. Right. And it would be kind of crazy to release, well, maybe not, but it seems silly to release it in end of December or for the end of December. Plus, they tend to not do big releases over the actual Christmas time. It's usually right before.
It makes sense. You want to be able to pre-order your stuff for Christmas.
Right, exactly. And because they usually do like if you order after this date, you might not get it by thing. And then that would only, if they did do that, then that would only give them 2 months to get an FAQ out and and an errata and fix anything. And you've got to assume that they want people to play a bunch of games and write stuff in, and so yeah.
Oh, it's exciting! It's exciting. We're going to get our grubby little fingers on it so soon. I don't know what it's going to mean for the show. Maybe we'll do some cool learning to play the new rules episodes.
Oh, it'll mean you'll be hearing and seeing plenty more of these beautiful smiling
faces. Yeah, it
faces.
does. I mean, I think we were both feeling a little bit of a lull with the game, with our hobby lives, regular life getting, taking the forefront, and the podcast like rocking onto the back burner just a little bit there over the summer. But now we're back. Super pumped, super excited. There is Gondor is calling, and the ale has come. Sam, Games Workshop has delivered the ale in the form of this newest edition.
Yeah, definitely, yeah, and no, I'm so excited, and I remember what my was, Ben. I was going to have you wildly speculate about one more thing.
Oh, bring it on! What you got?
That is, we're going to have a new The Road Goes Ever On and On article this Thursday. What do you think what are we gonna get this Thursday? Is it just gonna be some more like reveals of what's coming in the new edition? Are we gonna hear about what do you think's gonna be in there?
Ooh, it's gotta be just some more sneak peeks of rules, or are we gonna get? There's no way that because. See, here's my big question with the war in the Rohirrim stuff. Have you seen an actual trailer for that yet? There have been some like movie posters going around, but they're definitely not been produced by New Line Cinema. They've just been like people making mashups of stuff and slapping War of the Rohirrim on it.
I've seen some. I haven't seen a trailer. I have seen some still images that I strongly believe are actually from the movie, because I can't remember what the director's name is, but if you Google his name, you can see a bunch of the other like anime movies he's made, and it's in a very similar style.
Interesting. So I guess my question is, can they start previewing stuff if we're getting a new Dunlanding and Rohan box? Can we see previews of it before trailers even drop?
I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, even if we don't see models, we could get an announcement of there is going to be a new starter box.
Yeah,
it's going to be Dunlanding and whatever Rohan. That's what the whatever would be. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's probably going to be more rules. I wouldn't be shocked if we get a new profile. If we get like, this is an orc, and this is what his new profile looks like.
Yeah.
I also wouldn't be shocked if we got an example of this is a Minas Tirith. This is like whatever, the Men of the West Minas Tirith army list, or
Defenders of the White City.
Right. If we get whatever that legion is, and it includes Aragorn, and it includes blah, and it includes this and this and this and this, and
Yeah.
Even if it's not like doesn't have points or anything, but if we get sort of a like, this is how the layout's going to look, this is what's kind of gives you an example of what's included or not.
I didn't really follow along with it. Do you know how much stuff like that was previewed for the old world? Did we get any examples, or was it just mostly the models?
There was a bunch of examples of rules. They basically went through every phase and talked about, so they had there was an article about each phase, and that tends to be that's certainly how they did 8th edition, I think it was, for 40k, which was the like mega change from the full statistics and like charts and all that. They definitely did that for that. I didn't really follow along the New Age of Sigmar one, but
okay, yeah. So I haven't really followed along with any of them at all. I'm just now getting all hyped up by games like the Warhammer community for Lord of the Rings. So I could definitely see them starting to preview some stuff for us, which would be super exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think we're gonna get.
Would love to hear more about this intelligence stat. Is it getting used for anything else?
Yeah.
Um,
It's got to be
right? It
because
can't just be adding a
just
whole new stat on for
find the
just
ring
finding
bearer.
ring bearers and
Yeah.
random invisible spiders. 'Cause that's the
Yeah.
other thing that tended to get Shroud of Shadows.
Yeah. 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 No, I think we'll probably get. I think we'll probably at some point get previews. It depends a little bit when it's going up for pre-order, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
let's say you get one a week and you get a. This is how the like turn starts. This is
Do you think we're going to get one a
changes.
week?
Article. Yeah. 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 At least until it's like close to pre-ordering.
Cool. That's
Because
exciting.
they keep saying check back and there'll be more in the coming weeks.
That's true. They say week plan,
And
don't they?
since last week we've had, since they announced there's a new edition, we got two last week. I think it was last week. No, last week as we're recording was the one we're talking about. The week before that we got two.
Right.
So I bet there'll be one this week, and depending when it pre-orders, there'll probably be like one for a couple weeks, and then I bet when it's like not one again, then it'll be that coming Sunday we'll get next week, and Warhammer will be new edition going for pre-order.
Yeah.
So finishing thoughts, Ben. Anything you want to add? We'll close up this episode. I could keep talking for hours, but
I mean, not really. At this point, it's so much wild speculation. I am personally not, like I said earlier, not terribly concerned by the way the game's going. These all largely sound like positive changes to me. There will definitely be some stuff that gets moved to Legacy and slowly phased out that I will be sad about.
all the elves, they're going off into the west.
That's fine. There are some things that I think that hopefully get moved to just sort of scenario play only that I wouldn't miss. I mean, the signal tower is cool, but it doesn't work in matched play. I feel the same way about the Watcher in the water. Let's keep the scenario in the bloody lake where he belongs, not popping out of the ground, ruining everyone's day. But, I mean, generally, I think it's going to be a good addition. I think it's going to be great for the game. It's going to pull in a lot of new players. And I'm excited to learn some new rules, honestly. Like, sit down and read the rulebook cover to cover and try and find the changes.
Yeah, I think I would just say that I am really, really excited, and I'm sure there'll be things that I'll be like, oh man, about. But I think overall, I love what they've done with this edition of the rules. Every time they release new stuff, I'm, even if I'm like, I don't think it's fun or like whatever. I think I don't think there have been any like super wild misses for me, and I think they're proactive about changing things that I am like, oof, maybe not. But so I think Jay and the design team do an awesome job with this, and it's really, really cool to have rule designers who really play the game and play it at a very high level. And I am a super jazzed, Ben.
Yeah.
We're probably gonna get at least. If there are new models, we're going to get at least 2 copies of that 2-player starter set. We're going to throw down. I've been working on some Rohan terrain, so we're going to have some war in Rohan. The Rohirrim are warring. And there'll be plenty of stuff coming from us, I think, as we're
Absolutely. I'm really hoping we can get some games in, maybe even on camera, and learn the rules and get them all wrong and upload them to Sierra Journey, because it's just so exciting. Like you said earlier, it's really cool to be participating in the game when a new edition has come out and when they're like hyping it up. Historic Games Workshop has been known just to like surprise screw you with rules changes and stuff where you're like, oh, this sucks. But so far, it looks like they're being really open, and that's just so exciting.
It also makes me feel good. This will be my final thought. It makes me feel good about my probably not very competitive choice to the Nova Open. That will be the next thing you'll be hearing us talk about, because I don't really care. I'm just jazzed up for all the new stuff, whether it's like me buying a bunch of Hill Trolls for this current edition and building an army list for that, and hoping it changes and it's just something keeps being something I want to play. I'm just like, whatever, I don't care. I'm just here. I'm gonna just talk my opponent's ear off about this new edition of Lord of the Rings the entire time.
Exciting times.
Yes. Good times. Until the next time, dear listener, where we will be participating in the Nova Open. That is the next event we'll be going to, and you'll be hearing our voices. Ben, I've just realized for the first time that I think since we've moved to video, we've stopped talking about where you can find us next. We should probably start doing that.
We've done it a little bit, but yeah, it's been petering out a little bit, largely because we've been unsure as to where we're going to be next.
Fair enough. But yeah, Nova Open, that's where we'll be next. We'll be both playing, or I assume you are playing in Chaos and Ardor. I certainly am. Yep. And the doubles, and then obviously the grandest of tournaments where you will maybe lose to Ben, probably not lose to me, but either way, have a good time. Just, be more fun if it's me. Just kidding. That's actually probably...
I lose all the theme points.
You lose all the theme points, but you're still probably more fun to play against. All right. Well, until next time, dear listener and viewer, thanks for listening. Thanks for viewing. Please consider subscribing to our YouTubes because we're so close to that sweet 100th.
And if you have any thoughts, hopes, dreams about the new edition, we'd love to hear them in the comments below.
Yes. Give us those wild speculations.
Contrary opinions. If you love Special Strikes and are here to die on the hill, definitely tell Sam that he's wrong.
Yes. I look forward to telling you that you're wrong in return.
Until next time.
Thank you for listening to Gondor Calls for Ale. We hope you have enjoyed this episode. We, at Gondor Calls for Ale, are officially sponsored by the Baron of Dice, the producer of premium wargaming dice. These beautifully hand-swirled resin dice have no microbubbles and are therefore perfectly balanced. With over 3,000 variants and unique designs, nearly every tabletop gaming system is represented. So check out the description of this episode for a link and a discount code. Go buy yourself some new dice and let the good times roll. We at Gondor Calls for Ale are not associated with Games Workshop, New Line Cinema, or the Tolkien Estate. We hope we have not misrepresented or offended anyone. These recordings are strictly recollections of games we've played and are not commentaries on the character or competence of our opponents. They are intended purely for entertainment, and we hope they will be taken as such. You can find us on Patreon, see the link in the description. Supporting Gondor Calls for Ale there helps us continue to produce these episodes. You can find us on Instagram at Gondor_calls_for_ale. Feel free to send us a message there. Or on Facebook as Gondor Calls for Ale, another great place to send us a message. Or you can send us an email at gondorcallsforale@gmail.com. As Boromir, Captain of the White Tower, once said, remember today, listener, today this episode was good.